How are you?
Hi, Siddharth. I'm good, thanks. And yourself?
I'm great, thanks. And yourself? I look forward to catching up with you. So, what's been happening since the last time we chatted?
It's been very busy on some fronts, so lots of productive on the go stuff. But as I was mentioning a bit earlier when we were chatting, I've taken a bit of a hiatus and just done a lot of introspective work and laying the foundations for what I want to do next year. So it's been both busy on one side and a lot more introspective and calm. And I want to say mentally and emotionally productive on the other side. And how about you?
Uh, it's been interesting because I don't know if I told you that I had gone to Australia during the
Yes.
October period, and then I went there for a family event. So, obviously, I didn't do any content for like 2 weeks, so it feels a bit weird. I'm so used to doing that. But then, obviously, and then also it was weird because I also had gone to America in July.
Mhm.
And then I was supposed to be there for 3 months, and then I had to cut that trip quite short, very short, because of personal reasons. I don't know if I told you about them, but I can always tell you that off air.
Sure, of course. I think this has actually been quite a busy year for a lot of people. There's been a lot of travel, a lot of
Mhm.
productivity, a lot of do. And I think most people are the same. When we don't feel like we're being productive, then
Mm.
it feels like we're lazy or we
Mm.
are not doing the most and reaching our potential. But sometimes those rest periods are actually really important to just reset and fill your own cup before you go back onto that productive on the go mentality. So it's actually good. It's good that you got a bit of a break from the content.
Yeah. Okay, so what have been the highlights of your year thus far?
There have been a lot of personal highlights for me.
Hmm.
And I know it sounds very silly if you think
Hmm.
about it. I think people assume your highlights and your victories always have to be huge.
Mm.
Not necessarily for me. I think what's been really great is me becoming more aligned to my purpose and the work that I want to do, and just creating those boundaries around the stuff that isn't really a priority. It's just background noise and being able to say, okay, that's not for me. Finding really great yoga clients, which I love working with. They are probably the highlight of my week some of the time. They're just hilarious. On the spiritual side of things, in terms of the highlights, it has actually been a really emotional year for me, but it's been great in terms of the growth and development, just helping me to align to what it is that I really want to do with my life and my time. Oh, and then obviously on the personal front, there's been lots of great things happening, family wise,
Okay.
child wise. So my child moved to Crawford. I'm just sharing this with the world. And I went to Crawford. So it's kind of like having a little legacy moving on in the family. So lots of good, positive things happening in terms of the personal space. And on the work front, it's actually been really busy. But I'm not complaining. It's just been very on the go, busy, with a few quiet moments in between. But otherwise, all good.
Okay, if you don't mind me asking, how old is the child?
Mm. So Mish is 10 years old, but I always laugh and joke and I say she's 10 going on 65. Between her and I, she's probably more of the parent and adult than I am.
Wow.
But yeah, she's a bit of an old soul, that one.
Okay. All right. What's been the biggest lesson you've learned this year?
Is listening to my own voice. And I think this is probably a lesson for a lot of people out there over the years where we get so caught up in what
Hmm.
society deems is right for us or should be right for us, and all the noise of what we should be doing with our work, what we should be doing with our diplomas and our degrees. But actually, what makes us happy, what brings us satisfaction and joy and peace in our lives. So, for me, the biggest lesson has actually been blocking out all those voices, those noises, those stereotypes, and becoming more aligned with who I am, and basically what it is that brings me joy and happiness in my life and peace, of course, because I feel like that's really important. Peace is something most of us kind of downplay, but that's been my biggest lesson this year. And what about you? Did you learn anything about yourself or something important that you're carrying through to 2025?
That's a good question because there are so many. So I'm trying to think of one that's actually, I guess the one I've probably learned, not just for this year, but just in general, is to try and not overburden yourself, if that makes any sense to you. Because if you overburden
Absolutely.
yourself, you end up going crazy. You end up lashing out. You feel like you are like, it's kind of like a thing I've been doing it to myself in childhood, putting too much pressure on myself at times. So trying to keep the balance.
I think, it's a very normal feeling. And I know it
Hmm.
sounds strange to say that it's normal, but I think everybody has this definition of what their life or success or productivity looks like. And when it doesn't quite match that vision in our head, we feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. So we add more to our plate. And that's when sometimes we actually feel really overwhelmed, because I know I do that a lot. It's like, oh, I have free time. What else can I do today? Let me add a few more things. And actually, come the evening, you're like, oh my gosh, what a heavy, hectic day. But I think sometimes we don't realize that we're just trying to do as much as we can. And we start to feel overwhelmed with all the things that we've signed ourselves up for.
Okay, my next question to you is, are you working on any plans for 2025?
Um, I am. So I am looking at doing some online workshops and group stuff. I'm just getting a better idea of how I want to run it. I'll be focusing a lot more on the yoga nidra, but also combining it with a lot of the shamanic work that I already do. So creating programs that are all encompassing with your mind, your body, and your soul. But also, I think next year, it's more about imparting knowledge and creating a space where people are able to get what they need, the information, and ask questions. And it's not something that, it's always one on one. You have to book a session for, and then you've got to spend 2 hours on a call, but something that, is more accessible to people in their daily lives. Let's put it that way.
Wow. Okay, from an energy perspective, what do you think we can expect in 2025?
So it's been a really interesting 2024. And as we cross over into 2025, there's a lot of energetic differences taking place. So this year was actually numerologically the year of abundance and career and success business wise. Next year, there's going to be a very big focus on love, relationships, romance. So when I say relationships, it's not always just about, obviously a spouse or a partner, but relationships with your parents, siblings, friends, acquaintances. So there is a very heavy influence that we will be, I want to say, almost facing a lot of interesting or navigating through a lot of interesting relationships next year. And for those people who are single, apparently next year is actually supposed to be a really good year for dating and romance. So that's good news. I think everyone's had a very heavy 2024. Um, and I think that the idea of just a little bit of fun and romance would be great. The cardinal signs have come out of what is it? I think it's a 16-year karmic cycle. So, like your Aries, your Cancer, your Capricorn, and your Libra, they are going to be in a completely different energetic space next year, which is great. I say that because I'm a Capricorn and I've been waiting for this time for 16 years. So I think it'll be a really interesting space for those cardinal signs. There are obviously a lot of energetic changes. Like right now is Mercury retrograde, which ends on the 15th. So people are feeling heavy and they're feeling overwhelmed. And I think as we move into later December, early Jan, it's going to start to feel lighter and happier. But I always say, it doesn't matter what the planets say energetically, what the universe says from a general perspective, but each person will obviously navigate their own struggles and their own soul work that they need to do. So just keeping the faith, keeping the strength, and just trying to keep a positive attitude of gratitude. That would be important for 2025.
Okay, finally, as festive season is here, and I know you talk a lot about mental health. Do you have any mental advice for anyone struggling with the upcoming holidays?
So I always find it so interesting. I'm always emotionally up and down throughout the whole year, but come December 1st, I'm like the happiest chappy in the world. But there are a lot of people that struggle during the
Mm,
holidays. So one big thing is grief. If you've
mm,
lost someone during the year, or you're celebrating a first, like a first Christmas Eve, a first New Year, it does feel very heavy. And there's
mm,
absolutely nothing wrong with grieving during this time. I mean, it is important. And especially when you lose someone, the level of importance they have in your life is probably directly proportional to how big your grief is or how much of grief you're going to experience. There are people who have been through breakups recently. So holidays are not a great space because it feels like you're alone or you're lonely and
mm,
you don't actually have someone that is your own. But you've got friends, you've got family, you've got your health. It's sometimes really about
mm,
changing the perspective or your mindset. And that being said, it doesn't mean that you're wrong to feel sad or depressed, or if you're grieving, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that for some people, from a mental health perspective, it becomes really emotionally and mentally trying to just be jolly and cheerful and happy throughout the entire holiday. I mean, as happy and excited as I am because December is December,
mm.
I mean, I still remember my parents. I still think about people who have passed on and wondering, if they were around, how would things be different? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Whether you've lost someone recently or you've lost someone 10 or 15 years ago. There's also obviously the financial side of things. And I think a lot of people, because, we were talking about the pressure and being overwhelmed, a lot of people may feel, oh no, I'm working during the holidays and I need a break, and they can start
Mm,
to feel burnt out. And for some people, financially, it's looking at people going overseas on a holiday, buying a new car, buying a new house, where you start to feel like, oh, I wish that was me. And there's, again,
mm.
nothing wrong with feeling that way as long as you don't sit in those feelings for too long. Just remember to try and write a list of what you're grateful for. Find things that keep you positive and happy. And it could be something as small as just watching your favorite movie or series, or rewatching something, especially for people who have anxiety. That's great, is to rewatch something of yours that is a favorite. But mental health wise, this is a difficult month for a lot of people. So just be very gentle on yourself, and don't be too hard on how you're feeling and how you plan to navigate things.
All I got to say is thank you so much for your time once again, and hopefully we can once again catch up soon in the future. And I look forward to, and
Absolutely.
if you are interested, I'd like to help you out with this online thing you had mentioned earlier. It'd be nice to chat about that too.
Awesome. Thanks, Siddharth.